Welcome to the question and responses for Stress Kills. Now, please like this video, share this vital life-saving information, and subscribe to our channel. It's going to help us grow and spread this vital, life-changing information. Let's get into it. Question 1 from Computer Fast Repair. How do you regulate your nervous system back? Totally cool. That autonomic nervous system, or automatic, it is functioning correctly based on the input into the brain and your perception. And there's only 3 things that affect it: physical, chemical, and emotional stressors. So you have to address all 3 of those. Now, number 1, the physical stress, you got to find somebody that's going to take an x-ray, generally a corrective chiropractor. They're going to look at the x-ray, look at the structure, and we do static and stress x-rays so we can see if we see a structural deviation, can we correct it? And then how much can we correct it? So you identify the physical stress. Then chemical stress could be a leaky gut, could be poor sleep patterns, could be toxicities, could be medication use. All of these things are chemical stressors. Now, and then emotional stressors. And this has to do with your perception of the environment. And just think of this. Okay, if you practice tennis 3 to 4 hours a day, 7 days a week, okay, 365 days a year, you get pretty good at tennis. Well, if you practice stress 3 to 4 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, you get really good at it, and the brain actually gets hardwired into it. So we teach every patient 2 methods. 1, neurolinguistic programming, and we talk about reprogramming the frontal lobe, where anxiety, stress, depression, impulse control, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, everything is there. We also talk about healing the gut, because this is where it's called the gut brain or enteric brain, and then reprogramming it. Neurolinguistic programming is amazing. Then we teach diaphragmatic breathing and visualization techniques. And then the more you practice those visualization techniques, and the more you practice that neurolinguistic programming, the brain literally gets hardwired in a less stress environment. And so you have to address, you cannot achieve health unless you're addressing all 3 of those. So that means that all of the stress responses, like elevations in blood pressure, blood sugar, poor diet, poor sleep, or poor bowel function, poor sleep patterns, all of those things are stress responses. And sadly, in our system now, the sick care system, you're given medications without addressing the underlying stressors. So address the physical, chemical, emotional stress. And because right now, no matter what kind of stress state you're in, your body is responding correctly based on that stimulus. So you have to change the source of that stimulus. Question 2 from Computer Fast Repair again. Okay, what is the worst stress, physical or emotional? Now, I like the way you put that, worst stress. Now, the most common and the easiest to communicate to patients is physical stress. Why? Because we can identify it on surface electromyography. We can identify it on a structure analysis, looking at x-rays, and we can identify the minimum time from that past injury. So we can see injuries 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years old or more that person is identifying. So that's the easiest to communicate. The toughest one, and this is almost universal, I say, look, there's only 3 things we got to fix: physical, chemical, and emotional. And you're looking at 80% of the time, people go, oh, emotional. Okay, because they don't know what they don't know. They don't know that you can actually reprogram that brain, okay, into a more positive thing. And just think of this. Your brain has between 60 and 90,000 thoughts a day. Problem is, 90% of those thoughts are the same you had the day before. So thoughts fall in loops. And so what we teach everyone is to recognize those thought firing patterns. Because the more you have the same thoughts, that brain starts to hardwire together. So it's easier to achieve anxiety, stress, depression, defeatism, victimism. It's easy to achieve that if you practiced it. And then we teach them how to reprogram that. So you have to recognize the thought firing patterns that you have. And that's why we teach neurolinguistic programming and also visualization techniques. and then healing the gut. The gut is so intimately involved in emotions and brain function. This is neurotransmitter production. So even though physical stress, chemical stress, and emotional stress, you have the exact same nervous system response. So if you're emotionally upset, it's a similar response physiologically as if you were hit by a car. Okay, so really, all three stressors are important, but the emotional one is the most challenging to communicate to patients. But we teach every patient to master their emotions. Now, in the future, they're going to be empowering kids, because kids should be taught this from a really early age, that you are master of your own emotions. You are master. Like when the era that I was raised, sticks and stones can break my bones, but words can never hurt me. That was a common nursery rhyme. Now we're looking for safe spaces. I mean, it's crazy. Empower people, because your emotions are in your control. It's not the event. You cannot control the traumatic event that happened in your life. That traumas happen. This is life. But you can control your response. Your response is 100% in your control. This is why I recommend viewing videos on Stoicism. Look at Marcus Aurelius's writings. It's just brilliant. So when you master, and you're going to look back in history, every generation for thousands of years, and as long as humans have been humans, we've had emotional stressors, no matter what your status is. Okay. And so if you find, the only way to find that pathway is through developing your own strategies and realizing that your emotions are in your control. But physical, chemical, emotional stress, they're all equally the same effect on the body, but emotional is the most challenging to, but it's also the most brilliant. I mean, when you see people get empowered, that they can literally change their emotional state, it makes my soul smile. Wishful comment from Johanna Hedstrom. I wish I could get my blood pressure down naturally. Very simple. Okay. I refer everyone to this machine that's FDA approved. It's called Respirate. Okay. And all it is, you listen to a tune, and you breathe into a tune, and you breathe out to a tune, just causes you to deep breathe for 15 minutes. Okay. After deep breathing diaphragmatically for 15 minutes, your blood pressure will go down. And so look at hydration. Okay. That's going to be really huge. Look at sleep patterns, incredibly important. Look at physical, chemical, emotional stress, but understand, your body is self-regulating. That means it regulates itself. And so your blood pressure is regulated based on carbon dioxide levels and stress. So if the blood is not efficient at doing its job, that means that if you have physical, chemical, or emotional stress, the red blood cells should be separate. That way they can hold oxygen. They have an electronegative charge. So they're always repelling each other. If you're under stress, you have less stomach acid. The cells lose that electronegative charge. They start to overlap or stack. So if the blood's not efficient, then the blood pressure has to go up to adapt to the disefficiency of the blood. This is so, because if it's not holding the same amount of oxygen, pressure has to go up in order to adapt. This is why I recommend looking at the pulse pressure, the difference between systolic and diastolic. And before you take it, before you check your blood pressure, deep breathe diaphragmatically 15 minutes. Okay, if you don't want to do that and you want to scare yourself with an inaccurate blood pressure, take 4 shots of espresso and run up and down stairs. And then what you're going to have? You're going to have higher blood pressure. So, it's the body is regulating itself. This is something that doctors forget. I mean, they must, because otherwise they wouldn't be passing out these drugs to lower blood pressure without looking for the cause of why the blood pressure is high. So the pulse pressure is the difference between systolic and diastolic, the high and the low number. 40 to 60 is normal. If it's over that, so like 160 over 100 would be a normal pulse pressure. 160 over 80, okay, that means the blood is going to be inefficient at doing its job. So look at hydration, look at gut function, look at chronic states of stress. But really, you can get your blood pressure down by diaphragmatic breathing for 15 minutes. And if you do that diaphragmatic breathing for 15 minutes every day, or you do it, and I recommend all my patients, 10 minutes every hour, because that's literally how your body's designed. You got a diaphragm here, and most people breathe like that, where you're just moving your chest, breathing like that, in through the nose, out through the mouth, with the tummy moving. You're using the bottom 2/3 of your lungs, so you get a better oxygen transfer. So diaphragmatic breathe 15 minutes, and you'll see that body regulates healthy. And look at the stress level, because that's what's causing that blood pressure to be elevated, and the efficiency of the blood. That's why we do live blood cell analysis at almost every clinic I got, because you can see the health of the blood. Question 3 from Rocky Mountain Red Wing. How do you help the autonomic nervous system after being hit by a semi-truck? My son has those issues in the neck, the atlas, his carotid arteries are impinged and almost completely blocked. He was in tip-top shape, worked out, ate healthy in his 30s, and now he has many issues, including POTS, symptoms, blurry vision, headaches, and brain fog. His autonomic nervous system is functioning correctly based on the stress. Now, when you look at the carotid arteries, they come up the side. The vertebrae in the cervical spine, the neck area, has a hole in the side, so the vertebral arteries can go up and the carotid arteries are in the front. However, during this trauma, he more than likely has a loss of curve, forward head carriage, lateral deviation, and that can alter the structures in the neck and the carotids in the friggin' neck. And then when you're looking at POTS and headaches, brain fog, all of this has to do, you're looking at double crush injuries. 97% of all headaches are from the neck. So he absolutely has a physical trauma. So you got to get him to a chiropractor that's going to take a set of x-rays. And I mean, not just the neck. I mean, the neck, the mid-back, the low back, the pelvis. He's for sure going to have an issue there. And then you have to have that guy do a series of adjustments and then take another x-ray to show he actually fixed the problem. Okay. And then you have to get his sleep patterns changed. And look at our sleep restriction videos, heal his gut, because in a chronic state of stress, his gut function is going to be horrible. And so this is fermented foods. The diaphragmatic breathing is amazing to allow the system to start to function correctly, but physical, chemical, emotional stress. So we have to look at his physical structure, stabilize the pelvis, and correct any physical structures that are seen on an x-ray. Autonomic nervous system test would be fantastic, like a heart rate variability. That way you can monitor the progress. Live blood cell analysis will show, because that little 1 kilo brain, 2 pound brain burns 90% of the body's oxygen. And it does it by creating its own food called cerebral spinal fluid. And if there is a structural deviation in the neck, there's an interruption of flow of that cerebral spinal fluid. And that is going to lead to a lot of the symptoms that you're describing. So you've got to get the physical stressors corrected. Then, knowing that he was healthy and now his body is not working correctly, there's going to be emotional stressors. So look at our neurolinguistic programming videos, look at visualization, diaphragmatic breathing, symmetrical movements are going to be huge, particularly everybody with a physical trauma. We give them cross-crawl exercises to get that brain to fire off correctly again. And he will recover, but you got to find somebody to address the physical, you got to address the chemical, and you got to address the emotional, and then his system will be functioning correctly. Because right now, his system's in significant stress, and surprisingly, his brain and body are functioning correctly based on that stress. You have to address the underlying stressors. And let me know how he's doing. Question 4. I've gone to chiropractors before and they aren't like you. Are there different kinds? I'm in Ontario, Canada. What can I do or questions to ask? We have a list of 7 questions, and they're basic because particularly chiropractors in the olden days, like, the masters that taught me, they were really old school. Okay. And they wouldn't talk about symptoms because they know 90% of the nerves coming off the spine, there's no nociceptive fibers, or there's no pain fibers coming off. So if you do a thorough history, okay, you're only getting 10% of what's going on with that person. So you have to do an objective analysis. So number one question, does the chiropractor take x-rays, not of just the area of complaint, but you're looking at the entire structure? Because the ability to regenerate is located in the neck and the pelvis. And a lot of doctors aren't going to be looking at areas unless they have a complaint, which is really stupid because that's only 10% of the awareness of the patient. Look at bunion formation. Heck, that means that you've got compromised nerve supply to the feet, and that could indicate a pelvis issue. So I mean, you've got to find somebody that looks at the entire structure with a good set of x-rays. Static and stress x-rays would be exceptional. Then, do they take another x-ray to document that they fixed the problems they found on the first set of x-rays? Now, we do our protocol at 30 adjustments. We do post-nerve scans, post-x-rays to document that we're fixing the problem. Some people will have shorter protocols. Some people will have longer protocols. But you got to find a chiropractor that takes an x-ray first, does a series of adjustments, then takes a second x-ray to show they fixed the problems they found on the first set of x-rays. Okay? Is that basic or basic? You get your car worked on, you want to see the parts. The mechanic moved off. Okay, so third, do you work on post-surgery cases? Because knowing that spinal surgery has a horrible success rate and a huge failure rate. And the area, anytime you fuse an area of the spine, you got to work on the area above and below because it does. You alter that motion, you're altering the input to the brain, you're altering the biomechanics. So this is why in a lot of doctors, again, they're not taught the skill set. You can't adjust the area of the surgery, but you got to adjust above and below to make sure that you have the most appropriate biomechanics you can get. So do you take an x-ray? Do you take a post x-ray to document that you fixed the problem? Do you work on post-surgery cases? Do you work on kids? Do you work on seniors? Surprisingly, some doctors don't work on kids. Some doctors don't work on seniors. It's just fear and ignorance. They don't understand it. Okay. And then can you reverse arthritis? That would be kind of cool. And if you're doing pre and post x-rays, you're going to see disc regenerate. You're going to see structures change. And when you change the force loading and the biomechanics, then you're going to change the nutrients to those discs and the force loading on the bones. And there's a thing called Wolff's Law. Bones lay down where it's needed, resorb where it's not. And you literally have changed the force loading and the dynamic movement of that. You're going to change the shape of that bone eventually. And you can actually see this on post x-rays. So those are going to be the 6 of the most basic questions. And if you find one, let me know. Okay, now, if your question wasn't answered here, please go to our Dr. B VIP site, drbvip.com, because there I can answer free without any self-censorship. God bless you. These were great questions. Stay healthy, my friends. The world was built for you, and you were built for the world.